Good morning and welcome to Carolina Cares, an iHeartMedia production, and today's show proudly presented by Planet Vapor. My name is Tyler Ryan, your host, and today with Veterans Day, or Veterans Week, I guess, coming off of that, since Veterans Day was earlier this week, we're going to talk about the military, about service. We've got a military member here we're going to speak with about service, the drive, that drive to serve, and the other side of service, and that is the family member, the spouse, who serves right along next to their service member. Sure, maybe not, maybe not downrange, maybe not in a uniform, but the service, the sacrifice is no less important than the soldier who's fighting to protect our freedom. We're also going to talk about a brand new organization set up to help the families, help the soldiers of the South Carolina National Guard. So a lot to talk about, and we're going to start that entire conversation when Carolina Cares comes right back.
Okay, men, time to be an all-star caregiver. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments, be there emotionally and physically. Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find care guides at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Carolina Cares, and with Veterans Day about a week behind us, at this point it's been really Veterans Week, and it's never the wrong time to celebrate the brave men and women who have done so much for our country over the last 200 and some change years. But, Veterans Day, not to be confused with Memorial Day, but Veterans Day is that day where you take that extra second to say thank you to folks who serve. And some folks, and we talk about it a lot, but sometimes there's another sect of the service that we don't remember, and that's the families. So today our goal is to talk with the military. We want to talk about some families and a great new organization that's there to celebrate the military and assist and help, specifically the South Carolina National Guard. All that being said, I want to welcome this morning Kate Morrow, the Executive Director of the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And Miss, you're like an army. Oh my gosh. Lieutenant Colonel Cindy King with the National Guard.
Good morning.
Good morning. And of course, Miss Barbara Livingston, the better half of General Robert Livingston, who is the general of the South Carolina National Guard. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thank you all for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
Let me say it off the bat. Colonel, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you, your service. I mean, really, we want to hear some things that we may not hear. You don't have that everyday interaction, perhaps, with someone who served. And how long have you been a...
I just went over 21 years.
Good gracious.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I come from a military family.
Right.
My father served in the Air Force during Vietnam, and I'm proud to say our son, who's at the Citadel, just took the oath to serve yesterday.
That is outstanding.
My husband also is not only a veteran of Operation Just Cause, he served in Iraq, and he's looking forward to retiring after nearly 30 years of service in February.
Good gracious. I know a lot of, people say, I want my 20 and I'm out. But every time I talk to people, it's like, yeah, I'm at year 25, 26, 30, in General Livingston's case, 40?
Almost 41, yes.
41 years. So, I think people go into the Army or the military and say, yeah, I'm going to do, my first bid and I'm going to get out, and they don't. I'm going to do 20. Before you know it, it's 41 years later, right? Did you, when you first took your oath, did you see 20 years down the road? Did you see 22? What were you thinking back when you were the young, spry private?
Well, I served on active duty, and my husband and I met at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and we've been married 26 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The Guard's a family, the military's a family, and I think once you're in, you form those bonds, and you feel that connection to service, and it's a commitment, it's an obligation, but we're so proud to do it. We did leave the service to start our family, and then after 9/11, we felt that calling again. We knew our country needed us, and especially as parents, we knew that if we didn't step up, who would? And we joined the South Carolina National Guard, and we've been in nearly 11 years.
Right.
And you feel that commitment that freedom's not free, and we're proud to do what we do. And we know, passing the torch to our son, that if his generation doesn't do the service and defend freedom, who will?
Right. And there was a big, for those of you who remember now, we all remember where we were if we were alive, but, who may be old enough to really remember that morning. It seems like there was a big push for patriotism, and I host the 9/11 Memorial event every year, very proud to do that. And I always like to make that point, that the plan was to to destroy a country, a way of life, and all they did really was build it up, made it stronger. I remember all my friends, the next day, instead of going, I'm not doing that, they all said, no, I'm going to step in and do what I got to do.
Exactly,
And,
exactly.
Tell me how the military's changed for you and maybe changed your outlook, over the last 20 years or so.
There's a sense of commitment, a strong sense of mission. I know back when we served in the 90s, we had missions, but we did a lot of training. And when we were called, they were short missions. They were different. And I think after 9/11, you realize there are people out there that want to hurt us. They want to take away our way of life. Right. And I know so many people, you understand when you're training, you absolutely need to be ready, because when you're called, your country needs you. Mm-hmm. And I feel people, when they join now, they know what they're getting into. They feel that they want to serve, and they understand that it's an important mission right now, especially we're parents. Right. And I think that changes your sense too. And grandparents, some of our soldiers have grandchildren,
Sure.
General Livingston as well. It really changes your focus, because you want that same life for your children and your grandchildren that you had.
Right. Did that play into your decision to serve? Your dad, you probably growing up in that military family, your room was always wired tight, bounce a quarter off the bed, right?
Absolutely. Well, I have to tell you,
Sure.
My mother had questions. She's like, "What are you doing? My daughter's going to wear army boots." But it was my father who gave me that encouragement. Right. He said, "Cindy, do it." He said, "You won't regret a day of it." And sure. I'm so proud that we went to the Veterans Day parade with him a few years ago. And when you see the veterans out there, they're still so proud of their commitment. They wear their hats, they show where they served: Korea, World War II. And he had on his Vietnam veteran hat. And so many people came up and thanked him. Little kids gave him hugs. And I think that reminded him that, hey, what we did was something special.
And I'm glad you mentioned Vietnam too, because in my opinion, we treated our service members, our heroes, so poorly as a society when they came home from Vietnam. And I just don't think that when you go to serve, your job is to follow the orders of the president. You got to go. You don't have to agree with yourself, but you have a mission. You accomplish that mission. And I just think that anger, the getting spit on and just being treated so horribly was very misplaced. I mean, it's your right to disagree with a war or anything. Sir, I absolutely. That's what you guys fight to defend, so we can have that. But it's almost like it's the wrong messenger.
Exactly. And what we see when we have our homecoming ceremonies, it's the Vietnam veterans that come to welcome home our troops, because they know how important it is.
Sure. And there's we're losing them every day. World War II veterans. My grandfather is 96. And he served, and we know that he's long in the tooth, as you might say. Absolutely. But these treasures are there, and I always tell people, sit down and have a conversation. If it's your uncle, it's your dad, if it's some guy at a coffee shop, just listen to his stories, hear firsthand, because they are a treasure. They truly are.
Absolutely. We've heard General Livingston tell that many times when he speaks. Share the stories. That's what's so important, especially when we have our fallen, the families. That's what's so important to them. They want those stories to never be forgotten.
Sure. Now, Ms. Livingston, I want to talk a little bit about your service. And I've always said, and I 100% believe it, that it's not only, it's not only your husband, it's not only General Livingston or whoever that may be that serves. When he's deployed, when he's gone, when he's serving his country, whether it's at the TAG building down by Williams-Brice or he's in Afghanistan, you're serving too, because the spouses, whether it's guy or girl, doesn't really matter, but the spouse is left behind to serve, whatever you have to do, the community, the kids, keep the lights on at home. So it's not like you're sitting around eating bonbons when he's over with an M16. You guys are at least as important to the role, because if his mind isn't right, he's worried about you, he can't serve.
That is correct. It's a hard job. It's one that people don't really understand, because when our soldiers and airmen step away, the family's got to go on, and we're the glue that holds that family together. It's a job that is very difficult, because our lives, I tell people, are on pause. We're waiting for our loved one to come home, and everybody else's life goes on. Right. They forget that we've got someone missing in our family, so it's hard. You begin to wonder, does anybody care? And that's why I tell a lot of spouses, their lives are going on. You need to let them know when you need help. Right. You need to be vocal about it, because it's not they don't care. It's just they don't remember. Right. So it's a tough job, but it's one I've enjoyed. I've loved the children. It's hard on them when Dad steps away. Sure. But they understand his service. They understand our service, and it's all good. We've loved being a military family.
And there's a lot of sacrifices you make, and little things you don't think about. It's the daddy-daughter dances, it's soccer games, baseball games, birthdays.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of sacrifice. And was that hard for the kids to understand?
Yeah. When they were little, it's very hard for them to understand, why my daddy can't be there. Right. And they get it now. They truly understand it now, but that's very difficult for the younger children, and it's something that it's hard for them to heal from a lot of times. When
you got married, was the general in the Army yet, or was that a decision he made, or he kind of spring it on you and go, "Hey, Babs, let's get married. Oh, by the way."
Actually, no. We got married, and then he joined the Guard. He was still in college at Hampton-Sydney, so he joined the Guard in March before he graduated, and then went through basic. So yeah, it was kind of like, this is what I've decided I want to do. But he was in a volunteer fire department in at Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia, and was very involved in that service to the community, and he wanted some way to continue that. And his father was colonel in the National Guard, and so I think they struck up a conversation, and that was how he decided, maybe that's a way I can continue doing what I do here.
Did you have any idea the ride you were going to take over the next 41 years when he said, "Honey, I'm going to go join the Guard"? You went, "All right."
No clue, because when he joined, it was a lot of training and a lot of school, and he would be gone for long stretches of time. But did I think he would ever leave me and go to Afghanistan? I had no idea. I mean, that just wasn't even a thought, because we live in the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Never would I have thought 9/11 would have happened, and my husband would be asked to leave me.
Yeah, and that's got to be scary too. When it's the not knowing, right, for your family. Colonel with your husband, you don't always deploy together, so you've got kind of a dual role, and so I'm sure so is he, right? It's been that family member that's left behind, and I would almost argue that it's scarier for you, because I'm sure that the general doesn't share every horror of war. But for you, what's going on over there, or when someone is deployed, you know what it's like.
Exactly. I've been on both sides. I remember at the airport saying goodbye to my husband with our 2 children. They were a lot younger then. And although I knew what it means to serve, it was scary. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know if we'd see him again. And that was the hardest part, is trying to reassure your little ones that everything's going to be okay. We're going to talk to Dad. But deep in your heart, you just don't know. And 5 months later, he came home from Iraq, and then it was my turn to deploy, and I went to Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Both sides are very difficult. They really are. But I think it's that unknown as a loved one staying home when you can't reach them, or you haven't heard from them in days. When you hear something on the news, something bad that happened, you can't help but feel that tightness in your heart and hope, I hope they're okay. I hope they're safe. Because when you're in country, you're safe. You're on missions. Yes, there's risk. But you, at that moment, I'm fine. But your loved ones don't know that. So it's very difficult both ways, but I think having been on both sides, that unknown is what makes it so scary for your families.
How is technology probably gives you a little bit of peace of mind, right? I'm sure when General Livingston first started, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Skype, we certainly didn't have that new Facebook passport thing in Bob. So does that give you a little bit more peace when you're the spouse at home, when you can at least talk every now and again? Sometimes every day, I suppose, but does that help? Does that make it worse?
I have to think about that for just a second. Because we didn't have a lot of interaction when Bob was deployed. Right. I emailed every day. His emails were very sporadic, because how I dealt with his deployment was he was away on a business trip, and he'd take business trips periodically from his office that would take him out of town. And so that was why, I didn't hear from him for stretches of time. It was more comforting to me to know that he was on a business trip. I knew I was lying to myself, but that was the way I worked through it. But yeah, our contact was very sporadic, because he really wasn't sitting in an office to have the ability to call or the ability to email. Right. So I really don't know what it would be like if we had the chance to communicate. And I really don't think we would have communicated, because, like you say, he was on a mission and he really couldn't tell me anything. So our conversations were very much, I love you, everything's good here at home, everything's good over there. And that was really the gist of it. We never really talked.
Colonel, do you have the same type of interaction, or was there a little more communication, or has it changed?
When my husband was in Iraq, there was less communication, but I do remember a funny story. I came home from work, and our daughter was standing on the computer just chatting away with Daddy. It was the cutest thing. They were on Skype together, and I've got to tell you, that was amazing because they felt that connection still when they were able to Skype. So that did help us a lot.
Right. Speaking with Barbara Livingston, the better half, the wife of General Robert Livingston, who leads the South Carolina National Guard, Lieutenant Colonel Cindy King, Lieutenant Colonel Cindy King with the National Guard, and also Kate Morrow, your executive director of the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. And I know, Miss Livingston, you're involved with that heavily as well, and Colonel.
Much.
But let's talk about the foundation. I want to pivot from the military in general to this very special organization created to support South Carolinians and the men and women who serve.
Right. Thank you so much for having us today. I'm Kate Morrow with the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. I'm super honored to be a part of this organization. I do not come from a military background at all. I don't have anybody in my family that served in the military, so I continue to be in awe when I meet people like Cindy and Miss Barbara who tell their stories. I'm in awe this morning, almost tearing up just hearing what they have to say. It's a very special privilege to be in this role and get to meet these amazing men and women who have stories like this. It's a job that I take very seriously. I come from a marketing and PR background, so I kind of came into the foundation to bring more awareness to who the foundation is, what we do, and how we can do more for people, our veterans and our soldiers and our Guard members. So it's been an honor, and I've just really have enjoyed getting to know all of these people, the programs, and we just really look forward to getting the word out on who the foundation is. I think as more people learn who we are, what the foundation does, that we're going to get a lot more attention, because I think there's so many different people in the community that feel such a stronghold to the Guard and want to do something. Everybody has something that they're passionate about, an organization that really means a lot to them. And anybody that may feel that calling, I encourage you to reach out to the foundation. We would love to see how we can help you with your own mission or your own purpose, and really help honor these men and women.
Miss Barbara, what does the foundation do? Kind of run us through. You've got the Guard, you've got the service members, you've got the support, you've got the families. What is the foundation? What's that specific mission as it ties in and lays in next to the National Guard?
The foundation was created to support the men and women of the South Carolina National Guard. We have programs that are not funded by the federal government. They're programs that are unique to the South Carolina National Guard, that support not only the service members and their families, but also what we call our Gold Star families, families who have lost a loved one in war. So these programs, there is no money for them. We started doing them by asking for money and kind of just trying to patch it together and make it happen. And then we decided that we could make a foundation that could support these different programs, so that we could implement the programs and not have to worry about trying to figure out how to pay for them. Right. So they're totally unfunded and very unique to the National Guard. Our biggest funding is for what we call our post-deployment seminar. And this is for soldiers and airmen that have come home from deployment and have seen a lot of action in that deployment. And it's specifically designed for them and their significant other to come in for a weekend and meet with experts for them to talk through the difficulties that they are having. Right. So that's our biggest one. It's one that Bob and I are very passionate about, so it's just a matter of being able to have these programs available and the money available to support the programs. And
I'm glad you mentioned that I guess the reintegration, because you mentioned earlier that both lives stop.
Yeah, they do.
Personally, but the world doesn't stop. And so you've got you who's holding down the fort, just kind of doing your thing. Well, the general's away, the spouse is away, but then he or she gets back. And it's like walking, you leave, a year later you come back, you really expect everything to be exactly the same, and it's not, and that's what leads to a lot of I believe PTSD, a lot of the staggering, really sad numbers of the amount of service members who take their own lives because they realize I don't seem to fit here anymore. What's my role, right?
Yeah, it's very hard when the service members come back home, because I kind of tell the story of it's like being in a canoe with your family, and your loved one gets a phone call and has to report, jumps out of the canoe. Well, how do you rebalance that canoe so it doesn't tip over? And you move on downstream, and then all of a sudden you got somebody trying to get back in the canoe. You've got to reshuffle and reorganize to rebalance that. And it is a very delicate balancing act, because they've stepped away. You've assumed the responsibility for everything going on over here. They come back in, and in our case, I was still in hyperdrive when he came back, trying to take care of everything, make sure everything worked. And he wanted so desperately to do things, and I was like, before he could even react to them, calling somebody to fix it, or jumping in and do it, and it really it hurt his feelings, because he was no longer a part of the family. He didn't feel like he was needed, because I was just moving on without him, even though he was there. So it's a matter of reintegrating it and allowing them back in. I tell people I let him back into the house, but I didn't let him back into my heart. And that was tough. It was very tough. You just get in that hyper overdrive mode, and you got to wind back down from that. And so it does. It takes help.
Sure. Especially a position of leadership. Anyone who serves is a leadership role, whether you're a slick sleeve or you're the general of the National Guard. There's still leadership there, and that's got to be difficult to go from a command or from that to come back to your house and have nothing to do, because you're now the general, and he's got no one to give orders to, or no mission to carry out for a minute. See, I can see where that would take some time for that soldier to kind of refocus and find his place again.
Well, and two, they've been living, on an adrenaline, in this mode of, just, danger, high alert mode. And you come home and you ask your kids, well, pick up your shoes. Well, they don't snap to and do it like your soldiers did. And that's frustrating, and they've got to learn to dial it back and count to 10, because kids aren't going to respond immediately to a request, because, hey, they're kids.
Right.
I'm not your soldier. And that is very, very difficult. They're in, this high gear, and it's very hard for them to wind down to realize you can't give an order and expect your family to jump. So it's a process.
Speaking with Barbara Livingston, Lieutenant Colonel Cindy King, and Kate Morrow from the Executive Director of the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. Sheriff, if you want, real quick, I know there's some folks who have really stepped up to the plate to help with the foundation, the Hudsons, and you all had a big event a couple weeks ago at the governor's mansion, Henry's house, I call it. And if you want, I know there's some people who have really stepped into these shoes and seen the mission and said, hey, we're here to help. And sometimes that help is opening a checkbook, for sure, right?
Absolutely. I have to tell a quick funny story. So when in this past February, I was kind of doing some job searching, and I saw that there was a confidential foundation hiring an executive director, and I thought, this sounds really great. I would love to work for a foundation that kind of brings in a lot of my skills. And I was like, I wonder who this foundation is. That could make all the difference. And when I got the email from our board member, Joe Taylor, that it was the National Guard Foundation, I thought, wow, like who would say no to the National Guard?
Right.
And as I've gone out and met with sponsors, that's exactly what I've been met with. The problem is not that we don't have people out there that want to support the National Guard, is that they just don't know who we are yet. So just trying to increase that awareness. But as I've kind of gone on this journey, we have met so many wonderful people that are veterans, people that are tied to the National Guard or have a grandfather. So for instance, Mr. Jim Hudson has been an amazing sponsor. He is a Guard veteran. He has jumped in. His entire dealership is very military driven. They treat their customers that are military like royalty. Definitely go out there and check that out if you're military. Sure. Freddy's has been amazing. They're a new fast food restaurant, and they've got a couple locations throughout Columbia.
Oh, you have one over by Lex Med, I think, on Sunset Boulevard.
Right, there's one at Blythewood as well. They have a military background as well. And funny story with them is they have agreed to this is not the funny part, but they have agreed to, anytime we have soldiers on the ground, like with the hurricane, they've agreed that they would just to call them and they'll put lunches together real quickly and deliver them. But this is the funny part. When I met with Mr. Jim Hudson, he said, oh my gosh, we have a vehicle called GI Jim. It's this huge truck. You let us know. We'll go pick up Freddy's and we'll help them deliver. Right. So really just everybody coming together. Two of our other amazing sponsors are Columns Lumber. They have given us a very generous sponsorship. RNDC, they have been amazing. They do a lot of different campaigns for us to help get the word out. And then, of course, we have the National Guard Association and another organization, the Military Family Care Association. They have been really wonderful with our scholarship programs as well. So, and we have so many other sponsors. I would probably take up a whole hour naming them all. But we encourage anybody that feels it in their heart, or this is the gift that you want to give back as being a part of the foundation, please contact me. I would love to come meet with you.
That's great.
Thank you, Tyler.
Absolutely. Thank you. It is that service, and sometimes that service doesn't necessarily come in wearing a uniform, being a spouse. That is being a community member, remembering, in this case, South Carolina Guard, but military in general, that there's these brave men and women across the globe who serve our country. Whatever, whether it's the Army, the National Guard, Air Force, Marines, we can all sing the songs. But, it's that service. You mentioned the general, he started out as a volunteer fireman. And there's that thread of service. You talk to a lot of police officers, our prior military. It's that they're wired that way. It's just they don't see it. It's not for the money. It's not really for anything else. It's just something in their DNA that, right? Am I wrong? Am I missing something there, Colonel? Or this is what you do.
Exactly. It's so funny that you mentioned being wired for that, because I was so worried seeing what the impacts might be on our children when we both deployed, because it was hard on them, mom, dad missing events, activities. Even our son, one time he had a big school play and he was one of the lead characters, and you could just tell that something was missing that day, that dad wasn't there. But to see our son step up and want to serve, that it just warms your heart that there's something special there, that he didn't see it as a negative thing, he saw it as something positive.
Right, and it's kind of, you instill it. You're around it, you see it, you feel it, but it is something special. Is it 1% or something? I know that the number of people who serve in this country is a tiny number based on the population.
Yeah, that's what the number that they usually say, about less than 1% of our nation's citizens volunteer to serve. And we're so grateful for the first responders. Everything that they do it every day out on our streets, keeping our community safe.
All right, I love it. All right, ladies, we talk this all day long. In fact, I'd love to. Unfortunately, they do limit the time I have for the show this morning. So I want to thank Miss Barbara Livingston for your sacrifice, your service, right alongside with your husband, General Robert Livingston, who's finally going to retire, I understand.
That's
after 41 years.
That is correct.
Lieutenant Colonel Cindy King, also with the South Carolina Guard, thank you and your family. And I think it's great about your son stepping up and carrying the family torch.
Thank you so much, Tyler. If I can give a shout out to our children, Robert and Katie. They're the light of our lives, and we're so blessed.
I love it. And Miss Kate Mixon, Executive Director of the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. I appreciate what you do to wrangle all this together and make sure the foundation lights stay on, and these programs that they're trying to put together really are going to see fruition, as opposed to just being ideas and kernels.
Right. Thank you so much for having us today. We appreciate your time.
You got it. You can check out the website. It's SCNGF, as in South Carolina National Guard Foundation. I'll put links for you at WVOC under the Carolina Cares tab. I'll put links directly there for you so you can find it. But ladies, thank you again so much for your service and joining me this morning and spreading the word and letting us understand what it's like to serve from both sides.
Thank you.
Carolina Cares, we'll be right back.
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Carolina Cares. Once again, today's show proudly presented by Planet Vapor. Great information today, just listening to the perspective of a soldier, of a spouse, and how the two mix together. In the case of Colonel King, she's both. She's married to a service member too, so she's been the spouse at home and she's served and she's been deployed and she's gone to this. And of course, Kate Morrow from the South Carolina National Guard Foundation, a great organization to support the men and women of the South Carolina National Guard and the family members who equally serve in such an important role that they do, and they serve back here to hold the families together, make sure the kids are at school and the bills are paid and the lights are turned on. We're going to put more information for you in the South Carolina National Guard Foundation and other information at our Carolina Cares tab at WVOC.com. My name is Tyler Ryan. Once again, thank you for joining us this morning for Carolina Cares, this morning proudly presented by Planet Vapor. I will talk to you in 7 days.